Call to order the Carroll County Commissioners meeting of February 13th. Join me in the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I read a motion to accept the minutes from February 6th.
So moved.
I'll second those. Are there any additions or corrections? All those in favor of accepting say aye. Aye. Have you seen them before? Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Shelley, you want these?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Father. Here. Thank you for getting up and saving me the uncoiling the pain.
Oh, Cheryl, did you bring out Terry's packet?
Yeah, I did. No, it's right here. I thought I put it on the table in front of you, I'm sorry. That's okay, thank you.
Okay, I make a motion that we accept the January 30th minutes as amended.
They're down on the tabled items.
Oh, we gotta bring it off the table first.
We didn't table them. There was no motion to table them, was there, last week?
Well, they're here on the table.
I know, but there was never a motion to table them.
Doesn't make any difference to me. We're gonna either accept them or not to accept them.
Okay.
Right. Well,
I'll move, if you want to do it now, I'll move that we accept the January 30th minutes.
second.
Um,
Is there any discussion?
Well, I hadn't finished.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, because I paused, I'm trying to think what I was going to say. These minutes, I move that we accept the minutes of January 30th as presented on, what was last week, February 6th, because there were no changes.
There was one change. It was a motion that I had missed, but I can't
Oh, there
remember which
wasn't,
one it is.
okay,
There
well
was
then
one
just
change.
we'll make
Right.
Yeah, I just don't
we'll
remember
approve
which
the
one it
minutes
is.
and Terry seconds it, so.
Okay, all those in favor of accepting the minutes of January 30th as amended, say aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thanks, Sharon.
Okay, are there any media questions? Is there any public input? All right, then, Lisa is here now. Is there any objection if we move on down to the deeds online recording agreement? All right, everybody? Yep, fine with me. Okay, well, I was going to ask you to join us, but I see you're all set up, so go ahead.
I can move.
No, that's fine. This is for the electronic recording.
Yes, you have a copy of the electronic recording county submitter agreement that I propose to use in the future. We began e-recording in May of 2017, and it's been very popular. Vendors have contracts with clients, law firms and such, and we have contracts with vendors and the vendors are the people, the organizations that submit the documents electronically. We receive at this time almost half of our recordings through electronic recording. And we reject many of those submissions because the recording process is required to meet the RSAs and the standards for recording. And oftentimes, the documents submitted, we have questions about. Some submitters repeatedly send things to us that we reject. And this proposal is a contract between us directly with the submitter, putting them on notice that they need to pay attention to what they're doing, and if they don't, if they continue to submit things that we have to reject, that we will cut them off from electronic recording. They'll have to submit things by mail or come in at the counter so that we can actually see it's an original signature. Oftentimes that's the question. What I did was to ask Rockingham County, who has the Rockingham Register as an attorney, and she and their administration prepared one for Rockingham years ago. I asked them if I could use it, and they said sure. So what I did was go through it, copy it, change Carroll County from Rockingham to Carroll, change the address, added one additional sentence, and that's what you see before you. You would not use this for everybody. We have approximately 2,300 vendors which have access to submit to us. We have about 100 of them that regularly submit to us. And this would only be used for the problematic ones. So I ask you to review it and authorize me to sign it for the county. And if you want to sign it, that would be okay. It would just mean that every time I need to have one of these signed, I'd be coming to you and asking you to sign it.
How does Rockingham do that?
She signs it for the county, the register. You can see on the signature line, Registry of Deeds, Carroll County, New Hampshire. And it would be by Kathy Stacy, Register of Deeds.
And how does that work for Rockingham?
It gives her, what it does is it removes any potential liability of the county when she cuts them off. So if I were to cut a vendor off, which I haven't done yet, Belknap County has, Rockingham County has, a number of counties have, and there are good reasons to do it. People cut and paste documents. It's very clear. Anytime somebody submits an electronic document, we have a copy of it. We keep it. And so when you get the resubmission back in after the rejection, you can compare the two. And oftentimes you reject again because you say this is an altered document and you can't record altered documents. So if they submit it a third time,
That's when this
you
would
know.
kick in.
Yeah, and what we tend to do is call them up and say, we need you to submit this document over the counter or by mail so that we can actually see that it is an original. Now, they've promised to the vendor that they will only submit originals, but what's an original mean to these people? And do they, we want that quality control. I want to protect the integrity of the registry record.
Okay, so when you say you shut them off, that
Mm.
doesn't mean you refuse to record the deed. You just ask them to come in person and record the deed the old-fashioned way.
We would shut off the electronic access to recording only. We would never refuse to record a deed over the counter unless it doesn't meet the statutory
Right.
requirements.
The old-fashioned way, the way
Right.
you used to
Right.
do it before.
The
this.
old-fashioned way gives you that extra time, and you can analyze whether the signature is real or not. You can see the depression in the paper, you can feel it. You have some very good experts downstairs who can make those judgment calls, but you can't make those judgment calls on the screen oftentimes. So any questions, we ask them to submit it over the counter.
Do you have any questions for her? Yes, Dave.
Madam Registrar, who are, for example, who are these 2,600 vendors? Are they lawyers, or are they
Yes.
companies, or are they?
They're people who are willing to pay the fee to this vendor who services electronic recording. So it would be in Carroll County, the law firms, Walker and Barney, Sager and Smith, Cooper, Clark and Chant.
And so how much do they pay for this service?
They pay the electronic vendor various fees depending on which vendor they use, and it's in the hundreds of dollars. And it would be title abstract companies. And the ability to electronically record it saves the industry a lot of travel time. It saves them a lot. It's the way of the
So I
future.
buy a piece of property, and I go to a lawyer to do the paperwork. And is he now considered a vendor?
He has to have a contractual obligation with the vendor that electronically submits to us.
So we have 2,600 of these vendors, that's what you said.
2360.
And how much do
That's
they
not
pay
how
us?
we have. It's how many people are contracted with the vendors.
Well, maybe I misunderstood you. I thought you said we had 2,600
20
vendors.
2360, I don't know what I said, but the number is 2,360.
So they're not vendors to us.
No.
I'm
They're-
trying to figure out, to me, this is a mess. I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay.
A vendor to me is somebody that sells me something. Now, you're telling us these vendors, the lawyer goes to this electronic transfer company.
And there are 5 of those.
And there's 5 of those. So who is paying to use our system? The lawyer, the vendor, or the 5 electronic transfer places?
The banks and the lawyers pay to subscribe to the 5 vendors. And there are 2,000 plus or minus banks and lawyers and title companies that subscribe to the 5 vendors. In this case, it's one vendor that has 2,000 of them.
Right.
And the banks and the lawyers pay the recording fees and the transfer tax through the 5
Okay.
to the registry. And that money gets electronically transferred every night after the day is closed to the registry bank account from the 5
Electronic.
electronic
Yeah,
vendors.
Okay.
So the vendor has a lot of clients. And the clients of the vendor, they pay a fee to become clients. So it's not the man off the street. You wouldn't want that.
So do the vendors, to the electronic transfer companies, the 5 of them, do they pay us anything?
No,
Why not?
they pay us what the fees are by law.
But we're paying to maintain a system so that they don't have to come over here. They should be paying us some sort of a fee, I would think, to use, basically to use our equipment.
Well, they get that income from their clients.
My question is, do they pay us?
No, not a penny.
Why?
It's just not how it's worked in any of the other counties.
I'm not interested in
How
other
it's set
counties.
up.
It's Carroll County. Why can't we, if we're gonna sign this, say, okay, we're gonna have the 5 vendor companies pay us, I don't know how you do it, whether 10% of the fee that they're getting from the lawyer, or 5% or 2%, or we should be getting some income because we're paying for a system that they're using.
This is a service that the clients appreciate, and they pay for it, just like the online access
Yeah, but they don't
service.
pay us. They pay if I understand what you're saying, Lisa, they pay the electronic, one of the 5 electronic vendors. They pay them.
Yes,
The electronic vendors take that money and do whatever they want to. We get no money towards maintaining our equipment from people that are using it and wearing it out. Is that correct?
I would not say that's correct,
Why not?
because we don't get money from the 5 vendors per se.
Okay.
We have ease of access to the documents, and our constituents have ease of access to the recording process. Now, this contract that I'm proposing has nothing to do with the 5 vendors. Nothing.
This is a spanking for somebody that isn't submitting properly, right?
This is for the 2,000 that already have a contract with the 5 vendors that may not be paying attention to what they have agreed to, or they may have delegated the task to record to somebody that they haven't instructed properly. And so this is a reminder from Carroll County Registry of Deeds to the bank, let's say, who records their mortgages and discharges with us electronically, that they're not to record anything except by law, meaning original documents that have wet ink signatures that are properly reflective of what the law requires.
Further question?
Yes, sir.
Then Lisa, why is it our responsibility to send it out? Why isn't it the 5 electronic recording companies' responsibility to tell their customers, they are truly the vendor, tell their customers that, look, hey, you're not doing it right, do it right, or we're shutting you off?
We do communicate with those 5 vendors, and we do talk with them about why we want to shut someone off, or if we haven't done it yet, but we do talk to them about potential problems when we have multiple rejections. This is not intended, they already have contracts, and we have contracts with these 5 vendors. The clients have the contracts, and we have contracts. So that part is already in place, and we voted on that back in 2017 to establish those contracts, which spell out explicitly that basically the same thing that this says. What this does is it protects Carroll County and the client directly, because they have a contract with the 5 vendors. They don't have a contract with me. This gives them
And the
a
client is who, the person buying the piece of property or the lawyer?
No, the person submitting electronically, the law firm or
Okay.
the bank.
Okay,
So this is the 3rd leg of a triple link that protects Carroll County and enables us to say, hey, you're not following your agreement with Simplifile, so we're cutting you off. It's an additional protection for the county. It's not in place right now, and I feel it's prudent to do, because we've had some things come through that I wanted to cut people off, and I'd like to have this in place before I do it.
okay.
And then, so if I cut someone off, then I'm going to hand them this and say, if you want to get turned back on, you
Correct.
need to read this, sign it, and promise us that you're going to pay more attention to what you're doing. Rockingham has it in place with all of their vendors. They were doing electronic recording before we started it. If I were to go back in time and start over again, I think I'd perhaps have every vendor sign this ahead of time. But that was not in place, and I was not aware of it at the time, and there were not these issues at the time.
I think it's called live and learn.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
It makes perfect sense to me.
So do you want a motion to approve this today?
I would ask you to approve not only I would like you to approve my signing this agreement for the county with submitters, so that you don't have to go through this every time an incident happens. And I require this to be signed.
David?
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion, we table.
The motion's been made that we table this. Is there a second?
Is that so that you can read it, Dave, so we can have time to go through it and read it, or because
I
we're
don't know
not
how
sure
we do
that-
this, Terry, but there's no discussion, but you're correct.
I know.
There's no discussion on a table after it's passed, but that's
No,
halfway
there's
in the middle.
there's no discussion on after the motion to table,
I just wanted
and
to,
we didn't get a second, so, and that's unfortunately the parliamentary procedure, so there is a reason for tabling it, but I think I just expressed it.
Madam Chair?
Wait just 1 second, please.
do you want me to second so we can discuss?
No, we can't discuss a tabled motion.
Oh, he wants to table it.
And it didn't get a second, Madam Chairman?
Well, I think she was thinking about the second.
Okay, I'll make if it didn't get a second, I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir.
That we put this aside for 1 or 2 weeks while we study it. I'm not gonna sign anything that I don't have a complete understanding for, that's gonna tie the county up to something. So I would like a week or two to go over it and talk to some lawyers that are in the deed business and find out what we need to know.
Okay, I'll second.
And maybe we have all we need to know. I didn't mean that as a slight.
Okay. I believe the motion was made and seconded to study this for a week or so and check the legality of it, or
No,
just to
I'm
study
certain
it.
it's legal.
Just to study.
There's, I disagree with Lisa, apparently. I think that 5 electronic places should somehow be paying for the use of our equipment. And I want to find out how much problem this is for somebody that's using the procedure, and every once in a while, something goes awry. I mean, I'm not going to sign anything that I haven't read fully and don't understand. I've read it, but I don't understand it. So,
Further
voting no.
study.
For study, we'll vote yes.
Okay.
And I don't think it has to be a long period, a week, 2 weeks, whatever.
Okay. Yes, Lisa.
I have no problem with further study. I will continue to reject documents that are questionable. The purpose of this, Commissioner Babson, is to maintain the integrity of the record and protect the county in that process. So I welcome you to talk to real estate attorneys. I think that would be helpful for you.
Right. And maybe you can explain, he can come down to deeds and you can explain to him how who pays for what. because I think that's maybe part of the problem. You had another comment,
You
David?
talked me right out of my question, I can't remember what I was gonna ask.
Sorry about that. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Cheryl, would you kindly read the motion back, please?
Commissioner Babson motion to put aside the electronic recording county submitter agreement for 1 to 2 weeks for further study. Seconded by Commissioner McCarthy.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Lisa, you have your January review for us. It looks good.
Yes, we had, although I was not aware that I was giving a January review until this morning, I'm glad to review what we did in January. It was a good month. I don't know, you can see from the charts that we were up 4% compared to last year, January. I don't know if that's because December of 2018 things were carried forth from December. December was down from December of last year. So I don't know if it's a trend or if it's a carryover new year. But February proves to also be booming, and at this point in the month, we have 8 days into the month, and we're up 46% from February of last year.
Oh, wow, great.
There's been a lot of big transfer tax transfers in both months, many of them.
Didn't that happen last year also?
Well, every year there are some, but there have been an exceptional amount this January and February.
I noticed that this is back to the level it was in 2011. So, actually, it's above
Well, it's
that.
above that, and
Yeah.
it's the closest to 2007 that we've ever been for January. For the year last year, was the whole 2018 was the closest. We were just shy of 2007, just shy, a little bit.
So maybe the economy is improving.
Carroll County, it seems like it is.
That's a positive.
Yeah.
You have any questions? Yes, David?
Lisa, what have you estimated revenue for 2019?
Oh, I don't have my budget numbers with me, but it was the formula that we consistently have used over the years and that the other registrars use, which is the first 9 months of the year. You divide that by 9, so you get an average for the first 9 months, and then you multiply it by 12. So I believe that that number was put in the budget, but I believe that it has recently been decreased.
Because of last December.
I don't know. All the numbers that the commissioners approved in the budget seem to have been decreased by recently. I was told that they were all going to stay the same, but across the board, it looks like someone has dropped them down. I can't explain that because I was not being aware that it was going to happen. When the revenue numbers in early November on the 7th were presented, was it the 7th? That was expenditures. When the revenue numbers were presented, they were presented as is and they were accepted as is. But since then, they have been decreased. And I am unaware of why.
It's my recollection it was around 900,000. David?
Your recollection is pretty good. If my math, which is usually terrible, it's 905. As well as they say around here, we round up. It's 905,941, so call it 906.
I'd have to look at a budget.
Well, that's just what you told me. I just took your figures here for September and divided by 9 and multiplied by 12, and it came out to 9, unless my math is,
Okay.
unless my machine is wrong.
And that's close to my recollection,
Yes.
so I think it's probably
I think it's been dropped from that, if you look at the budget,
Well, we can check that.
and I think all of the revenue numbers were dropped. I don't understand why, but.
Well, and unfortunately Ken is ill today, so we'll follow up on that. Any questions for Lisa? No? It always makes me feel good when I see things that say that Carroll County's economy is improving, so.
And it doesn't hurt to have the numbers lower, except that then,
Now, I don't know, under commissioner updates, were you going to talk about the deeds committee?
Yeah, can.
Okay, so. All right, anything else for us today?
that's all I have.
All right, well, thank you.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
No, forget it, I forget what I was gonna ask, but it had to do with the revenue.
The revenue.
Over them.
Yes,
Commissioner Babson, would you like me to go get those budget numbers?
No, I just did it
Okay.
quickly enough. I was wondering what you put in, and if that's the way you did it, that's what the figure is, 906,000.
Thank you.
Oh, I know what it was. It was some question about, at the delegation meeting, about having money go directly to the treasurer or to you, or?
The surcharge equipment account funding?
Yes, that's what it was. Are we gonna discuss that today, or?
I had thought that had been determined, but is that up to us?
I don't know, to me, it would look like it was still up in the air, but
Well, probably the public would like to know also. I believe that there were two alternatives,
Yep.
an accountable one and a non-accountable or something.
They're both accountable.
Okay, I'm sorry. My recollection isn't very good.
So the surcharge equipment account has been included or excluded from the budget different ways for the past 2 years. And this 2019 budget, we're trying to do it in a consistent method. So I got together with the auditors and with Catherine, our controller, and met. And the auditors audit 5, I believe, maybe 6 counties in New Hampshire. And they looked into how those counties dealt with the surcharge equipment account. And I looked into the other counties and how they dealt with the surcharge equipment account. And we pulled all our information so that we had the data for 10 counties. None of the counties include the surcharge equipment account revenue in the general fund, except Carroll County. So I believe what we talked about is removing the revenue from the general fund of the deeds budget. The law, 478, it's, I think, J, says it has, the surcharge equipment account, which is not taxpayer money, has to be put in a separate, distinct account, and every month, the register of deeds pays it over to the county treasurer. And that's what we do. It's in a separate bank account, and the county treasurer has signing authority on that account. How to account for it in the budget or not in the budget was the question. And the auditors say that because it's an account that's funded by law rather than by taxpayers, it should not be in the registry of deeds budget. So where to put it is in a special reserve designated fund. Everybody agrees on that. But the question is, how does the business office account for the expenditures made out of the account? And there are two ways that can be done. One of them is, like we do now, I write a check. You know, this money has to be approved by both the Board of Commissioners and by the whole full delegation before it's spent. So I come to you first, then I go to the delegation. Everybody says, yes, buy roller shelving to hold the books. And so then I order the roller shelving and get a bill. I write the check out, and the county treasurer reviews it all and then signs it. That's the process now. Because...
Excuse me, Lisa, and that's coming out of a special account? A special bank account, is not coming out of the general fund?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
So what that means is the check doesn't get produced by the business office. And so therefore it's not in the general fund paperwork to show what it is expended for. And so you have to look at two sets of books in order to tell what you've spent. And so the controller would like us to have that bill go to her, have the money be paid for out of the general fund, and then for the surcharge equipment account to write a check to the county instead of to the vendor. That way it goes through the accounting process and everybody sees everything that's being paid in one spot. Now, this is only 1 or 2 checks a year that go out of the equipment account, if that. And so the decision as to how it works in the business office is a financial management decision. And to me, as long as the treasurer and I both sign those checks, which is what we do now, it doesn't matter to me which way it goes. There's a beauty to keeping it out of the general fund, and then there's a beauty for accounting's sake to keep it in the general fund. Both of them are transparent, both of them are available at any point in time for people to look at. But the reports that the business office produces don't have all those numbers in it until I reimburse the county. And I guess that has to be a manual entry of accounting. Maybe Cheryl might be able to explain that differently, but it's been suggested that that's a manual entry rather than something that just goes through the whole process.
Did that answer your question? Yes.
Well, partly. I don't understand if we're taking $2 for every deed or whatever the fee is, why it can't go into a special account that's outside the budget. That we only write 2 or 3 checks a year on, if we write that many. And then it's dealt with as an account that basically is inactive. And it's out here and we just write the 2 checks or a year and the rest of it. And why would it get commingled with the general fund if it isn't general fund dollars?
I think that's a question for the comptroller to answer, because it's a financial bookkeeping thing, I think, yes.
Again, it's all transparent, both of them. The difficulty I see with, and I'm going to play devil's advocate here, because I truly don't care which way it's managed. If, Mr. Babson, it's totally separate like it was this year, when you're analyzing the budget for the deeds office, you're looking at the general fund. You didn't see the $75,000 that I spent from the surcharge equipment account in those numbers. Because
Okay.
And that's huge when you start comparing year to year to year. And this year's budget was based, and I've said this before, was decided and cut without talking to me. And so you didn't have that input that there's money elsewhere that was spent for various things. So, the argument for putting the expenditures through the general fund is that you would be able to have a report directly from the controller that it wouldn't necessarily go through the general fund on the expenditure lines, or it could. In Rockingham County, they do put it on the expenditure lines.
Why wouldn't we, Lisa, if you're gonna do it outside the budget, why wouldn't we have the revenue side and take the expense out of the general fund budget also? So it stands out here as a complete account on its own.
Could you repeat that? I didn't
Well,
understand.
if you're gonna take, let's say, 100,000 to buy shelving,
Mhm.
and you're gonna take it out of this special fund over here, you wanna have some accounting for the expense.
Yes,
Right now, the expense shows up in our general fund budget. So,
it didn't this past year, did it?
it had to show up somewhere. If you put the
It-
money in,
it
it had
did.
to come out of somewhere.
It did. So the proposal.
So you should take them, if you're gonna have it outside the budget on the revenue, you should have it outside the budget on the expense also.
If you have it outside the budget on the expense, then you don't have the accounting within the budget process.
Why do you need it if it's out in a special, it's gonna be a small account, you could have it, the accountant just look at it and say, yeah, that's okay for this account that has $100,000 in it, we have two expenses for $12,000.
Because when you're preparing the budget, you're not necessarily prepared that portion. You get those reports that you use year after year after year. You saw the product.
But it isn't our money, so what difference does it make where it is?
Because you can compare the years and what the expenditures are, what you've actually paid. And when you're trying to compare, you wanna know what's in those line items.
The account is so small, I would think you could
It's not small.
do it on a piece of paper like this.
Well, I don't think the accountant and the auditors, they want to have a way to track that, to see what's going on.
They have it in this account that's outside the budget. They have all
The auditors are okay with either way.
I don't think they'd have a problem with that.
And they say it's a management decision. So
I'm not an accountant, but if I were doing it, that's the way I'd do it.
the email from the auditors is quite clear. They have two options, and it's been passed around, I believe, to all of you.
Yes.
So,
See, okay.
it's a decision that I believe is this board's purview to make.
Yes, sir.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Could I ask Lisa a question? Did I hear you say that you had no input in your budget for this year?
I had input on November 7th, and after November 7th, I had no input and things changed dramatically. I've had input since with the subcommittee, the delegation subcommittee, and
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions for Lisa? Well, thank you for coming out on a snowy morning and getting here early.
thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Now, on the same reasoning that we skipped to the deeds, would it be all right, because Howie's here, if we go to the hospice provider contract?
Yes.
Okay. Howie, would you come and join us, please?
Thank you. Good morning, thank you all for venturing out on a snowy day. I actually come bearing good tidings. This is kind of a horrible day. We had no call-outs in nursing, no call-outs in dining services.
Wow.
The worst possible weather brings out the best in our very dedicated group. I mean, this is a tough day, and they're all there today. It's wonderful. It's a dedicated group.
They all get free ice cream today.
No, they get free lunch.
Free lunch, you see?
3 to 1 gets a free taco bar, and 11 to 7 we get a free. But
I think that is just
and
absolutely
it's the least we can
wonderful.
do, because, you know, they're all getting up early to get their driveways, cars done, and leaving early for the time, and they show up, but, you know, they're there.
I just think that's
That's amazing.
fantastic, yes.
But I also have a hospice contract for you.
Here,
And the good news, and I see that you have copies, I didn't know if Ken had a chance to get them to you. The good news is it costs us absolutely nothing. The reason the contract is so long and involved, it's to meet the HIPAA requirements under Medicare and Medicaid. Presently, we're working with 2 hospices, Compassus, which is private, and also Central New Hampshire VNA and Hospice, which is a not-for-profit. This is Lakes Region VNA and Hospice. The reason why I approached them is that they are, though they've been established as a business, as a not-for-profit for 95 years, they only in the last year, a little over a year, have been doing hospice. But their hospice medical director is Dr. Julie Ferlin, who is one of our attending physicians.
let's get this.
So it's a logical connection, but there's absolutely no financial implication to the county. They do all their own billing.
So, hospice bills the patient.
Nope, they bill Medicare. There's no charge to the resident.
Okay, all right, now, I have a question. Our BEAS money pays the Visiting Nurse Association,
Correct. Not for this though.
not for this.
No, this is strictly, in fact, they're not allowed to double dip, as it were.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
my brain is clicking
No,
here.
the BAS money would be for Medicaid, Medicaid services from a VNA. This is Medicare money under hospice.
Okay,
And what we do is, by having multiple hospice, we give our residents the choice of the hospice of choice. So they get to choose. But this looks to be an excellent one. It's a not-for-profit, and having Dr. Ferlin involved, I think is going to allow them to do an especially good job.
Could you explain for our viewers what hospice does do here in the nursing home? Because they do fantastic.
Hospice care is end-of-life care, sometimes called palliative, treating the symptoms but not the underlying disease. The goal is to keep somebody comfortable, first and foremost. Apart from hospice, our own staff does a wonderful job with what we call care and comfort. But there sometimes comes a time where additional services would be benefited. Sometimes it's for the benefit of the resident's family. The hospice is able to bring in clergy, social workers, and also LNAs and nurses. But it's the addition of the social worker and clergy is particularly helpful. But sometimes it's a complicated care at end of life, and the extra hours that they provide is a big help to staff as well.
Thank you for that.
But typically, today, say, we have 8 hospice residents, so about roughly 8% at any given time. And hospice is generally defined very broadly as someone who has an expected life expectancy of 6 months or less. It's not hard and fast, and we've had actually the good fortune of graduating people from hospice to off hospice, and then they can come back again. Sometimes things look really, really dire, and people recover.
Yes, sir.
What's
Yes,
the
sir.
capacity for a hospice beds? Did you tell us that at one time? How many beds do you have reserved?
Well,
for hospice?
what's wonderful about our new building is that it's all private room. So in typically hospice care and other facilities, you move a resident from one room to the death room, to the hospice room. We never have to do that. Now what we do at the time of admission, a hospice admission delayed is oftentimes an admission denied. So most often people are able to get care on the outside with hospice care in their own home, but sometimes it gets to be a time where they don't have the equipment, the physical ability to transfer to keep somebody comfortable. We're coming here for the last couple of weeks of their life. Makes sense. If we have a bed, we give preference at that time, and then their hospice provider comes right with them. But we don't, unlike Stratford County now has they inherited a wonderful hospice. And I say inherited, thanks to Ray Bauer down there, they actually were able to take over the Hyder House, which I think is about 24-bed hospice. And they got a brand new facility, I think only about 7 years old, for $1. Which is wonderful, and they've been able to manage it very nicely. But we function, we do a pretty good job of it here with the resources we have.
Any questions, Davis? So this contract is no financial expense.
Absolutely none.
And how does this work? Does this interfere at all with the compassion care we have?
Not at all, because the resident chooses which hospice they would prefer. So we present all the options. And some, if a resident were Dr. Furlan's, patient, would very likely consider this one. Or for different reasons, based on what, I hate to say it, and put it in the context of competition, but the hospice that's doing the best job is going to be the one that residents are going to gravitate towards.
Yes.
The compassion care, what is that?
Compassus is the business name of the for-profit that actually has most of our residents.
Okay.
Central
That's the
DNA and Hospice
That's the difference.
has relatively few, about
Okay.
2.
David?
Yeah, on the medical director and the nurse, are we turning the responsibility of medical care over to some other doctor rather than the doctor that's working in our facility, and the same thing with the nurse? Or are we gonna have to hire another nurse?
Oh, we don't have to hire anybody, they're bringing in nurse. But on occasion, their doctor will be more familiar with end-of-life medications, and our doctor will defer it. They work collaboratively with our doctor, but this actually, it doesn't reduce our need to provide staffing, but it never increases our need.
Okay.
Oops, I'm sorry. Any other questions? Okay, I made a motion. Now, we don't sign this, you sign this.
Well, they wrote it up that way, and being that, I would think that an appropriate motion for you to make would be for the board to authorize me to sign on behalf of the county, so that it's still a board decision, but I'll do the paperwork for you. But it's also okay if you want to cross how they prepared it, my name out and put your name in. That's, the important part is that the Board of Commissioners approve all contracts.
All right. So I'll await a motion for the board to approve this contract and approve Howie signing it.
Second.
Is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Well, thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Drive safely on your trip home.
Right, did you have any line item transfers for us today?
No,
Okay.
no, I think we're wrapped up, but I'm not,
Okay.
if not, we're very close.
Nice.
Every once in a while, you get a couple vendors that hold off doing billing. One thing that I'm looking forward to as we start doing this transition, when we get a formal purchase order system, nothing can fall between the cracks, because it's actually entered into the system at the time it's ordered, not at the time that it's received or the invoice is received.
Oh, very nice.
So it'll I think it's going to improve a lot of end of the year. I think it's going to solve many end of the year issues.
Is that part of what Seth is creating?
I think that's part of what's been proposed as the ACS change, is with the upgrade. I think there's consideration of accounts, not accounts payable, but a purchase order module.
Oh, nice. All right, anything else for us?
I think that covers the ground. Open to any questions, though, if you have any.
Yes,
Howie, do you have the time for Seth over there to do more purchasing?
I think we're going to get there. What Seth right now is working on, and I think he's gonna be able, I'm not sure how long it's gonna take them, is we're getting into inventory management. Once we get the inventory management done, and we introduce the system and take that as electronic as we can with the capability we have, I think that's gonna introduce some capacity for the potential of centralized purchasing. The truth is, the purchasing for the other departments is relatively minor compared to what we're doing. The others, in case in point, House of Corrections, very predictable. I mean, the variation they have is small, and over here in administration, it's relatively small, so I shouldn't speak for Seth, but I bet once we have all the systems in place, there's gonna be capacity.
Thank you.
okay. All right, thank you, Howie.
Thank you, Commissioners.
And please relay to your staff how impressed we were with their 100% attendance.
I will, in fact, I said I'm gonna send out an all-staff message thanking them, and I'll pass along your word to them today.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Okay, so we're back up on the agenda. We have no particular transfers. The encumbrances, it's my understanding that the equipment repair for the generator, $4,425 had to be added to the encumbered list. And I think that's the encumbered update, which brings the total now to $437,147 for the encumbrances. Any questions, comments, statements?
I forget, why was that added? That was added in the delegation meeting. you remember
Because
why?
of those, the repair that was.
Oh, because it was gonna stretch out 2 or 3 more weeks.
For the,
and,
yeah, so it was for the,
yeah,
the
that's
rental.
what it was.
All right. Now, there is a grant procedure review. Now, Cheryl, do you know if this is already in place, or is this a new one?
I don't know.
Because usually when it's a review, we get the old one, and then whatever changes. But this has no previous date or signatures on it. Shall we add this to the list of study further?
Yep.
Is that all right with you?
Yes, yeah, I want to read this, yeah.
So, I guess I'll make a motion that we put the procedures for federal and state grant application acceptance and administration. What did we call the first one? For review? David's
Further
first
study.
motion. Yeah, for further study. You can use the same format for that motion. All those, second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 So put that on for study. The state border contract, Jason is sick with the flu, so that's going to have to be put on, just postponed. Do you have information for the credit cards?
Yeah. You know, we're in a situation, we've got to do something. And I did the checks this week, along with yourself and Joe. And I don't know whether I come from a different world or what, but if you looked at the backup for the credit cards, there was a couple there that should have popped out to both of you, in my estimation, and neither one of you pulled those out. One was for $76 for Huck's Hogan's sandwiches for staff appreciation. Another one was for $37 or $38 for a going away present that where I came from, if you were gonna give someone a going away gift, you passed the hat and took the money and bought it. You didn't take it out of, this is taxpayers' money. We've got people that can't even afford their oil, and we're buying $76 worth of Huck's Hogan's. 2 pay periods before, it was $96 for Chinese food for the same thing. And I don't know whether you two are familiar with the procedures on the credit card, but if we have a $20,000 bill, which is not unlikely on the credit cards, and we pay $19,900, and we hold back for $100, we have to pay interest on half of the daily balance for the month, plus the penalty, and that's big dollars. So if we want to dispute somebody's expenditures, we can't do it without us costing money. We've got to do, maybe we write the offenders and say, look, if you keep it up, we're going to pull back the card, or we take back all the cards to do something, but it can't continue. Why should the taxpayers pay for Chinese food for staff appreciation? I'm sorry, people in this county, a lot of them are very poor, and they shouldn't have to pay for that kind of thing.
Do we have a written policy on credit card use, or is there?
No,
Well, that was, my understanding was that was what Ken was investigating with the current credit card company and with the bank in New Hampshire, was to see if we could work out something where each department head had one credit card, and it was on a separate account, so that if there was problems with one department, it would not carry over into an effect for the others.
It would eliminate our exposure on the others.
Right, and then if it was misused, we could pull the credit card from that department. But I haven't heard how he's made out with that. He was also going to look and see about, there are credit cards that give you a rewards system. And when we were discussing, the last time I was discussing him, I think he said that the bank in New Hampshire doesn't offer a rewards system card.
I think he said that.
So I think this is still a work in progress, David. The credit cards are a problem, so I think that getting it separated out so that they all don't come billed as it is. If you look at the billing, it all goes to the Mountain View nursing home, and it's under that one account. So if we could break it up, so each department head had their own account, then each department would be responsible for that. And then we could work on whatever comes from that. But that was the first step, was to get different accounts.
I think that's a good idea, but I also think you need to have a policy on what the credit cards can be used for, or how often it can be used for staff appreciation. Every month is a little overkill, personally. But I don't know if this was the same departments you're talking about, I don't need to know, but I think we should have a policy on what they can be used for.
Well, I think once you get to the point where each department is having their own card, then you can have a policy that's countywide, that covers all departments. And some of that should be, I kind of thought what we were discussing was, if there was abuse,
Yep.
then it would just cease for that one department. And that way, everybody doesn't get penalized. And,
Well, I think that's a good idea, and
Be-
I, in no way am I objecting to staff appreciation like
No.
Jason does once a year when he has a gathering over here at the nursing home with all his employees, but every month,
and it might very well be that a budget item that's within so much. Because, I mean, one might have a banquet where it was X number of dollars, and then another one might be doing it every 6 months where it's half of X number of dollars, or as long as the final annual amount is the same.
well, I think it's come to the point, push comes to shove, that we shouldn't be sitting around talking about it, we should be doing something about it. This has been, I've been talking about it for 6 years, because it's the first time I got to sign the checks when I first took office. The thing didn't look right to me, and I've been continuing. Now we're down to the point where we have some options, and I strongly recommend, we don't have any leverage. If someone wants to go out and it's a line item and they can put it anywhere, they can buy it, and we can't object because we're gonna pay the interest and the penalties if we don't pay it.
Well, and I think that's why each department having their own
Credit card.
account. Yeah, their own account, their own separate account. So for example, which we wouldn't, but say Dave Babson had his own account, and Amanda Bevard had her own account, and Terry McCarthy had her own account. And then Amanda Bevard was out here doing stuff she wasn't supposed to do, then you just pull that card away. And she-
I understand what you're saying, Madam Chairman, but let's do something about it.
Well, I thought that's what Ken was doing. I thought that's what he was working on.
Ken's got plenty to do, and I think we should decide what we're gonna do today, and I'll make a motion that we, for starters, we give each department their own credit card, and with a stipulation that if they abuse it, they lose it.
Could we just add that to their own credit card account, so it would be separate? Because like the sheriff has many cards,
Yep,
but it would be his one account. It would be the Carroll County Department, Sheriff's Department account.
Is it separate? He has
Well-
his own.
But I'm just saying, we would do the same idea for all the departments. So each would have their own account, and they wouldn't in any way interfere with each other. Would that be all right, just to put that word account in there?
Well-
Just their own credit card account.
yep.
I'll second that. Is there any more discussion?
The other thing, yes. The other thing, if we're gonna sign the checks, Madam Chairman, I strongly suggest you look at the invoice before you sign it. You obviously, and neither did Joe. You didn't, both of those would have stuck up like a sore thumb if you had looked over the credit card pile. You know, you might as well just rub and stamp it if you're not gonna question it. Sorry I feel that way, but I feel strongly, very strongly about it.
Is there any more discussion about each department having a credit card, a separate credit card account? Yes.
Do we have to make that like a policy, or if we're making that decision, is that gonna be I don't know, or we can just do it? Or do we have to set?
Well, what will happen is the account we have now will have to, the cards will have to come back, and each department will have to get their own account. You do that. Is that a long-term process, or is that something that goes through the business office?
Kathy will have to, she's the one that can contact the credit card company. So she would have to deal with them on that and see how to separate that all out.
And set up each separate account.
Because they all have a credit card as it is, so if they can just be separated, that would be easier, but I don't know, you'd have to talk to Kathy about that.
So,
Yes.
so what do we do about the nursing home where there's 5 or 6 or 7 people purchasing on that one card?
That would be one account.
There's not that many, David. There's
Susie,
Susan, Seth.
Chris,
doesn't have a credit card.
yeah,
No, so it's Susan, Seth, that's really it over there now.
then why don't we have, you know, in that case, just Seth with a card? And then if there's any abuse, we know who to speak to.
Well, I think Susan uses her card when she takes the
Once she
the
goes
residents on
to
outings and
lunch
things like
stuff,
that.
yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
she really needs to keep her own card
And
or have one.
is that the rec department?
Yeah.
Because they also buy materials and things. That's the same department, right? Yeah.
Cheryl makes a good point, yeah, she needs one. So do we have, let's just talk about Mountain View. So do we have, Susan has her own card, Howie has his own card. How do we break down the nursing home?
If we have a nursing home account,
Okay,
then that nursing home account would have however many cards that the department head, or in this case Howie, would think was necessary and to whom. And those cards would come in under the account, just like they do now. You can tell who's spent what,
right,
but it would be under the nursing home account. And that would be separate from the House of Corrections account. The House of Corrections account would have, they have 2 cards, don't they?
Right now, they only have one.
They only have one. So they would have one. And Jason would be responsible for that one.
so they purchase on Jason's card from the office,
Yes.
okay.
Jason does want another card, though.
What,
Jason wants a second card for his,
with his name on it, or is it somebody
No,
else's?
no.
no, for when he has to send people away to training or something, they're gonna need a card to, for whatever comes up. And if they take Jason's card, then they're left without anything to use.
So if we do that, can the card be in Jason's name, and when X goes to training, Jason hands him the card, and they go and they come in under Jason's account?
Yeah. Well, I think it would be House of Corrections account, but Jason would be, in the end, be responsible for it.
Yeah, we'll have, just like the, Mountain View, it has, somebody's under it on each one of those cards.
That way, if somebody went to California for training, and you see a trip to Hawaii on the card, you might want to object to it.
But I would assume that at the nursing home, Bob should have a card, because he now just uses Seth's card. So that, for the maintenance department, that would probably be, much cleaner if he had his own card and then Seth had
That
his
might,
own card.
ought to be in his own department.
Right.
He's a department head, so he would have his own account, and he might only use it twice a month, or, because I don't see many from Bob, but whatever. That would be, his department would have an account.
It's actually quite a bit from Bob, but it's intermingled. You have to look at the account numbers, like Commissioner Babson does that, looks, who is this from?
Who it goes
And
from.
because he has 2 buildings, so he actually does use it for quite a bit. So it would be cleaner on my end if he had his own card. It would be much easier than,
For the maintenance department.
yeah, because that is this thick already.
So did we vote on that motion that each?
No, we haven't.
Okay, is there any more discussion?
Could you read the motion back, please?
That each department have a separate credit card account. Was that what you wrote? I'm sorry, I thought you asked me.
What I wrote was Commissioner Babson motion to give each department their own credit card account. And it was seconded by you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Now, along with that comes the responsibility for us that you both were discussing about a procedure or a policy as to what happens with that credit card.
I think if there's any place we need a policy, I would say it's here.
And it seems to me that the performance audit before mentioned it. I think the new performance audit mentioned credit cards, and I think the auditors in the past have mentioned credit cards too, right? Have they given any guidelines, or do
No.
they just want them eliminated?
I don't think they want them eliminated, I think in the last one, they made a comment about the credit cards.
Well, I think probably the first thing would be that the department head is ultimately responsible.
I think we should write a letter to the department heads and tell them they're ultimately responsible and that we expect them to treat the card as if they were purchasing from their home and not use it just as free money. I don't know how you put that in a letter.
I would think anything spent on the credit card would have to be, like it is now, backed up with receipts. And the line that it's anticipated it will come from in the budget. Yes, Jerry?
No, sure.
Oh, sure.
You might want to talk to Kathy about how this whole process is going to work. I don't know if you want to have her come up, because you have to have a name, like somebody's going to have to be responsible for that card. It's all under Mountain View right now with somebody's number that was here 20 years ago.
How do I call her? Oh, wait a minute.
You just pick up this phone. Do you want me to call her?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to ask her to come up?
I think you want her to come up and
That
explain
would
it?
be nice, yeah.
I agree. I think one of the first steps is to talk to your department heads or Kathy and see how many we need for each department and who is going to be,
Talk about the credit card.
take the ownership of those cards. But ultimately, the department head is responsible.
She can't come up because there's nobody else in the office.
I saw with our magic phone system, it rings all over the world if nobody answers it. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Maybe we could have her come at our next meeting with
Yeah.
how she does that and who she recommends to have the card in each department, and how many and who should have them, and Ken should have some input also, I would think.
I would think that if Kathy is notified that we have passed this motion, that each department should have its own separate credit card account. And then she'll know how that should happen, and she can do any research she needs to this week. So we could ask her to come next week. And maybe she could arrange to have Jessica babysit the phones or something for that short
Yeah.
time period.
I'm sure.
Yes.
I don't know how that's gonna work, because ultimately the credit card is gonna say Carroll County or Mountain View Nursing Home, and you can put, every one of them comes now with somebody's name on it, but by having the head of it, it it isn't gonna gain anything, because ultimately, we stand behind that person's credit.
But what'll happen is the bill, for example,
Yeah,
will come to the finance office.
yeah.
And the credit card in the finance office will be the head of the finance office responsibility. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody in the finance office hasn't used it at one time or another for whatever, but they're gonna keep track of that, and they're gonna be responsible. That bill will come, say that bill comes and it's $1,400.
Who's the bill gonna come to? What is the address on the bill, as they like to say, when you call them up?
I would assume it would be finance department and whoever is responsible for the finance department. If it came to the registry of deeds department, it would go to
So when they
Lisa
do a
Scott.
credit check, when they do a credit check on somebody, they're gonna do it on the finance department, or are they gonna do it on the individual? It isn't just as simple as putting somebody's name on the account, because we do that already, as I see it. I'm not an expert on credit cards, all I know is there's gotta be a better system than we're working on now.
I think,
Go ahead, Terry.
with your separate accounts, we'll have more accountability. If it's
You'll have
separate,
that.
we'll have that, we'll be able to keep track of it. I think it'll be much easier for the finance department to keep track of it. If it comes in, I know the county is ultimately responsible for all of them, but for us here, we'll have more accountability for the department heads and for the finance department to keep track of. They'll come in and probably on separate bills.
And
I would
and
imagine.
Terry, who's responsible for the bill when it comes in?
No, we are,
So
but we'll be able to track it a lot easier, I think.
we'll probably track it easier, but as I see it, we haven't gained anything on this penalty and interest, because we still have to pay it if it comes to Carroll County, even if
We
it's
do.
in somebody else's name.
Well, but when the sheriff's department bill comes in, how does that get addressed?
Sheriff's Department broken down.
Yeah, it goes to the Carroll County Sheriff's Department, and then each one of them, there's one for Dawn.
Everyone has a
Right.
card.
Okay, so with
But they
that,
come separate.
with that account, if we disagree with something on there and it doesn't get paid, that has no effect on the Mountain View account, right?
No.
And that's the way these separate accounts would be. They would, just like the sheriff's department, only they would be one for each department. So, for example, if the registry of deeds, we disagreed with something on that bill and it didn't get paid, the only one that would be paying interest or penalized would be the registry of deeds account.
And who's gonna pay it? The taxpayers is gonna pay it. If we've got one for $76 for Huck's Hogan sandwiches, and you say, I'm not gonna pull it, then yes, we've limited our exposure, but we still pay it.
Well, that's why we need the policy. That's why we need the policy, and that can be part of the policy.
And what's the policy gonna say? Well, if we object to it, you pay for it personally?
No, but I think that, that you have to say I think we have to spell it out, what the credit card could be used for.
Right.
Right? And after 2 infractions or 3,
Yeah,
however,
we're gonna yank it.
well, we will yank it. And I think,
Yeah.
And yes,
I
the
think we'll
first,
get a better system that way. We might not make out financially, like you say, that much better, but I think we will in the long run.
and we will only be paying for maybe 2 infractions rather than,
And I think, if one person loses their credit card, the others are gonna set up and take notice and say, well, I don't,
I agree. One person
one
gets,
person, so. I think it's a start, Dave.
Well, we gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
well, and we made the motion, and we'll let Kathy work through whatever it needs to be, and she can present to us next week and kind of
Yeah.
give us, what is and what isn't possible.
Yeah, her recommendations on how to,
I don't think we're gonna get this solved in a week or two. I think it's
No,
gonna
we have
take
to
some
get
time.
back.
Long
started.
range, there's no question,
Yeah.
but
We started.
you're
we
starting
can, we
again.
can stop, put them on notice that we're not gonna pay for outings.
Well, I think that's the next thing we have to do is to come up with the policy. You know, what is the credit card to be used for? You know, I was thinking of the things that I use my credit card for. I use it for things where I don't want to be carrying cash to deal with it. If I'm traveling, I use it for food and, because we have a gas card, so we don't need to put that on there.
Right. I think, yeah, we'll have a policy what it could be used for, but if they have $200 in their budget for staff, whatever, then they'll use that, but once that $200 is gone, they don't get any more.
Right.
I mean, we can't stop them from spending it, but, you know, once they've used it, that's it, no more. And we can, you know, keep much better track of it this way.
Yep. It's a start.
But I think maybe what we should do this week is all three of us write down things that we think are important to have in that policy. You know, it's a little,
And we need, I think also from Kathy, when she wants whatever paperwork they have to turn in for their credit card on such and such a date. Well, I'm sure we already have that, but just reinforce that. And when we get all this done, we send a letter out to each department head saying this is what we expect and blah, blah, blah.
That's it.
Yes?
yes.
That's a good point. Yeah. No department head or elected official or anybody should be telling Cheryl that, or not answering Cheryl, and when they finally get an answer, say, well, there was no rush. Cheryl's job is get the check out, and department heads and elected officials shouldn't be writing back and saying, well, you had plenty of time, it was no rush, after you've asked for backup 2 or 3 times and there's no answer.
I agree. I think that you should have in the policy, and whatever Cheryl and Kathy decide, we get the bill on such and such a date. You have X amount, 5 days to get us this because the check has to be in the mail at such and such a date.
Well, I think the bills will go to the independent,
Right.
individual
But still.
department heads. So when they take the bill, they can get the backup and take the whole thing down like they would any other
Oh,
bill.
you're naive. That isn't what's happening.
It does, they do go to the individuals. So-
Now.
Now, they do.
But it doesn't, the individual doesn't necessarily put the paperwork together and send it down as
Well,
the instance last week. She asked 2 times and never even got an answer.
Well, we have to start cracking down on that and
And if it's in a
in
policy,
the policy and holding them accountable, no matter who it is.
yeah, and the policy
So,
should make that better. Now, the other thing is, I think if each one has their own, if each department head has their own account, I think the billing will come, I know each of my credit cards have a different billing date and a different due date, which I think will make things easier for Cheryl, because she won't have this huge packet once a month. It'll be spread out over it. That would be my,
yeah, I think that we should let Kathy or Cheryl make that decision if they want all the bills to come on a certain date, whichever is easier for them.
well, the
or
credit
not.
cards do it their own.
Their own way, but I mean, I think you can request what date you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I would leave that up.
I just got through that with my
Yeah,
accounts there.
they'll,
Said they were gonna send them the same day and called them back, and went the same day, called them back, weren't the same day, and now this was the 3rd call, and it's 5 months later and they're still not on the same day, but they all tell me, oh, we'll correct that right away.
but, you know, I would leave that up to them to decide what's easier for them.
Yep.
So that'll be our homework, is to think about what needs to go on this credit card policy. And then we'll speak with Kathy next week. And I'll speak with Kathy today and ask her if she would do that research for us and come back next week. Is there anything else on credit cards we should discuss?
No, I think
Cheryl, do you have the yellow folder?
This is from code for Nita and Perkins for Hale's location. Just needs your signature.
Is that the evaluation? Assessing contract.
And there's non-public minutes that need to be approved.
I spoke with Kathy Golding last Saturday, and she said there's a one-time assessing that they're going to be requiring. They do a 3-year thing, but then there was a one-time. So there will be a second contract coming. This is the first.
Well, they have to do a physical assessment every 5 years, don't they? And then they can do it on sales the other 4 years, I think. I think it's something like that.
Maybe that's the one that she was talking about, was the 5-year. No, unfortunately, we haven't seen that. We didn't get that ahead of time.
so what has to be done with this today? Oh, just your signature?
Probably just mine,
Yeah,
because it's always,
Yeah.
but as we act as selectmen, I don't know why I. That may be both, are they both in there?
I think there's 2 there.
All right, that may be what she was talking about.
Can we get copies of that, just so we can because I'm new, I'd like to familiarize
All right,
myself with everything.
I almost think that this might be one of those also things that needs to be studied further, where there's 2 of them. I think that's what the 2 of them is about.
Let me make copies for next week.
Sure, it's-
Or I can give them, I can scan them.
That would be very nice, Cheryl, and then next week we can sign them, because all 3 are asked to sign them. And if you could get us copies before we leave today, are the checks ready today? Okay, so if, before we leave, if you could get us copies so we could read them, and then.
Do you want me to copy or just electronically, which do you,
It makes no difference, whatever's easier for you.
it doesn't matter.
Do you already have it electronically?
No, I'll just scan it in.
Yeah. Well,
Or just, yeah, you can just copy them, that's fine too. It makes no difference.
yes, sir.
How much are they charging us? And why aren't we going out for bid to find out if we're getting a better deal? They're assessing at 100 houses has got to be over $5,000.
That's why I'd like to read, have to read that, it doesn't have to give a,
That way we could have this for a week to study and then see if that's.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's less than 5,000, but I can't believe it.
I didn't see a price on that. That was my question, so. If Cheryl will get us a copy before we leave, and then we can vote on that next week and study it. Because we don't, a lot of times from Hales, we don't get pre-information.
Can we wait on these and next week? There's a non-public minutes, but if you have to discuss them, we don't have any non-publics today, so we'll just keep them in here for next week.
We're supposed to have a non-public and we're supposed to have a non-meeting today.
It's not on the agenda.
Okay. Well, I may have gotten it into Ken after he printed the agenda.
But if you are going into non-public, you can do
We
the
can,
minutes then.
okay, yeah, we can do that. Anything else in there?
That's it.
There's no Siemens update because Bob Mary isn't here today. There are no administrative updates,
Bob is here.
He
Oh.
is here, he's just busy.
but he's not in here yet. He's out cleaning snow. Ken unfortunately is sick, so he's not here. Commissioner updates. David?
I've got a couple of things.
Okay.
Let's take the tough one first. You know, when you two meet with the registrar in her office, that's an unposted meeting. It isn't a chance social meeting, it isn't whatever it is, but it's illegal, and it should stop.
Are you talking about Friday? That was posted.
No, I'm talking about, I don't want to go into it, but I'm around here all the day and people talk to me. And one of the complaints is that a lot of time is being spent by you two in Lisa's office. And whether it's true or not, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. If it's not true, then forget it. If it is, it's an illegal meeting, and that's all I want to make you aware of. The other thing is that I think we should do something about getting a speaker system in here for the delegation meetings. No matter how many times you tell Chairman Damaris that she's speaking softly and you can't hear her, you know, the lady on my right has a problem speaking with someone that can't hear and knows the problems, and I'm beginning to know the problems. And I'd like to see, we must have a simple sound system that we can plug in for the day, and yeah, maybe they have to hand the microphone from one to another. You go to a lot of meetings, Terry, don't they have
We have,
a system where you can have 2 or 3 microphones so that you don't have to pass one around?
Yeah.
Somebody can have one at this table and that table and just pass it down those 2 tables?
yes, we do.
Because I had a hard time hearing a lot of what went on the
yeah.
other day.
But it all depends if you have it or you have to, they're expensive.
I can look into that if you want.
You testing me? What did you say?
I said I can look into that for you if you like.
Would you please?
Yes.
Anything else, David?
Nope.
Terry?
I just wanted to talk about, we had our first meeting for the subcommittee for archival restoration. So it's Lisa, Registry of Deeds is on it, Joe Treasurer is on it, and we have 2 delegation members. I believe it's Representative Cordelli and Representative Woodcock. We met briefly on Monday. Today's Wednesday, Monday.
Was it Monday?
Monday.
Oh, I apologize, it was Monday.
Monday. And there were 4 of us. Mr. Woodcock was out.
No, you wasn't here.
He wasn't here. And Lisa did a great presentation for us with her a packet. We went downstairs, looked at some of the books and plans, and we have been charged with reading over all this material and trying to come up with a reasonable solution for trying to get more work done on the books. So that's where we're at. We're meeting again on the 25th, and we want to try to get something going as soon as we can. David? Oh, I'm sorry.
David?
Nice to have 2 chairmen.
I'm sorry.
No, I I've got a question. I was under the impression that when we hoodwinked into Terry into being chairman of this committee, that Amanda, you and I were stepping aside. I didn't come to that meeting because I thought that our position was Terry would be our representative. You not only came in, but you participated, and not to a great extent, but you added your 2 cents into it, and that's not what we did. And I am telling you now that I agreed to go on what the board, I'm backing out of that, because if we're gonna have an independent person, Terry, then we shouldn't be going and adding our 2 cents. So, I'm telling you right now, I'm backing out of my vote. I was irritated when I found out that I stayed out on purpose so that it would be just Terry.
Well, I'm the one that asked them to get together that day. I introduced to them, I told them what the commissioners had decided and why we had formed the meeting, the committee, and then they chose Terry as their chairman, and that was it. I was just there to
Did you leave?
Set it up. No, I didn't. I stayed because I was just curious as to what was going on.
Well, I was curious too, but I thought our agreement was Terry would represent us there.
Well, and I think she did an admirable job.
I don't doubt that.
And-
That's not the issue.
And I did go down to look at the books, and I will say this, at no time that I can remember have Terry and I both been in Lisa Scott's office at the same time. We were both in the vault on Monday, because we were looking at the books that have been restored and at the books that need to be restored.
Was it posted?
It was part of that posted meeting, yes.
Okay. That's not the information I got, but as I said, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm correct, it's not a legal meeting. Now, I don't know how you can go over, I was there the other day, and you two were with Lisa sitting there and having lunch. I don't agree with 91A. I think that this is how you find out information, and it should be allowed, but by law, it isn't.
But you had lunch with us too.
Yeah, I know, I know.
I think,
Yes.
if I may,
Yes.
because I questioned that too, and I actually went to Cheryl to see about her posting, Amanda and I going to the broadband. But,
Theoretically, you're supposed to, Terry, but isn't it ridiculous?
yeah, but I read, as long as we don't make any decisions, it's okay. Now, I don't know. Now, I know that Representative Comeau thinks that's a gray area also. So I think, and that's what I said, that the three of us should get together and decide what we're gonna do. Are we gonna post all those little things, or are we not? Or, I mean,
Well,
we've gotta,
I think 91A clearly defines what's a meeting and what isn't.
right.
And it says, except for, if I can't remember the wording exactly, but it's something like, unless it's a chance social meeting, it's a meeting. And, I think, to me, it's ridiculous. I know the purpose of the law, but when you carry it to extremes, I've been through going over to that court for 91A infractions, and I don't want to ever do it again.
So when the three of us go to a county association meeting, that should be posted?
They are, they're posted down there, and I don't think we have to post it because it's posted at wherever we're holding the meeting that we're all going to be there.
But what about the ride down and the ride back?
To me, that's illegal.
So we should post that we're riding down and riding back, and then no one can be available to that.
I mean, that's what I think we have to decide, we either post everything,
Yeah,
or, and that's gonna be a lot of work for Cheryl. I mean, we usually go over and have a cup of soup after these meetings, and we have to post that, that's what I mean, that's kind of
it's ridiculous.
ridiculous.
And we go to Farm Bureau meetings together
Yeah.
and
Well, that one, I think you could probably stretch as a social meeting or nothing to do with the county.
well,
But maybe you're right, the purpose of the law is good. You don't want
Right,
the
I
board
think,
hiding something, but
right,
when you get down to the ridiculous situation of if you go over for lunch or you get through at 1 and you go over for a cup of soup and two of you go over together and there's a third person from the county there and that constitutes a meeting, that's no more a meeting than but I guess the fear is you'll make a decision there and then come next week and hold a meeting and say, it's crazy.
well, I like to think that we were elected because the constituents in this county have a certain amount of faith and trust in us. And if we say, no, we're not discussing or deciding county business, that should be sufficient. But you're right, 3 commissioners sitting down at a table having soup, it can,
The meeting.
you take just a picture and it looks, who knows what's going on.
Yep.
So we post that we're going to lunch.
Well, I think somewhere we ought to get a decisive decision whether if the 3 of us have soup and we don't make a decision, that's not a meeting, or that if you make a decision, then it is a meeting. I mean, there must be,
I think that's what we, yeah.
but I think the law states that it's, because that question came up before and there was a meeting.
Cheryl?
How about, down the lobby, we have our board there that has notice on it, the commissioners will meet every Wednesday at 8:30 unless posted otherwise. Why can't we add to that, they may also be at the nursing home for lunch after their meetings? So that's always posted there, and we don't have to post it every week if you guys decide to go and have a cup of soup. But it will be there saying, there's a possibility they will be at the nursing home having lunch.
Yeah, I think that's,
I like that
Yeah,
idea.
well,
At least we're covered with letting them know.
And the other thing though is, on any day, any time, the 3 of us can be in that office. That's not, so does that constitute a meeting?
Sure. But I'm not gonna race you to get there first so the 2 of you can't come in.
It's
I mean,
like,
that's ridiculous.
You know,
That's,
I think, where,
Or we build a new building so we each can have our own office?
so do we go to the Secretary of State or DRA, who can we go to get a specific answer on exactly? I know there's RSAs, but if we can talk to whoever and
I
get
would
it,
think it would be the Attorney General's office.
that's what I think too. Okay,
so the attorney,
and to get it, and have him send us something stating exactly what we're entitled to do and not
Yeah.
entitled to do for all of us.
okay.
It's hard for me, because I'm very informal, and so that's why I take over your job.
Well, that's fine. That's better. So the things we want to know is food, Terry and I go to women's North Country.
Federated, we go to, Republican Women's Group, but that's
That's not posted.
no.
Should be.
Well, I haven't been to a meeting yet since
No, the 2 of us haven't been there together.
but still, that's just crazy.
But this stuff that I'm asking the Attorney General's office about when we're having food, when it's a Republican women's group, when we are all in the office together.
I think that's an important question, because we're certainly not gonna put an addition on the building, and we're not
Right.
gonna have a race to see who is here, so they can.
Oh, we could
look
ask
at
for
their
separate
computer,
offices.
and the other two can't come in.
Well, yeah, well, that was one of the things I said when I was first elected, was if we went over to the annex, then each could have a separate office, and this wouldn't be a question. The other thing are, Farm Bureau, what else are we involved in, David?
I think that's it.
The county
Right, we're not on the
Association of Counties. We
Oh,
have to-
right.
That one's posted, we went through that a year or two ago.
Yeah, but the trip.
Oh, yeah, the trip.
That's
The
crazy.
Trip, do we have to take all 3 county vehicles,
Yeah, I mean, technically you do.
you know?
Well, we rode down together before, I don't think we talked about anything.
Well, no, we
didn't.
said we
didn't, we
We didn't.
said we weren't gonna when we started.
Yeah, but
But you take a picture of the 3 of us going by in a vehicle, and who's, you
Yeah.
know.
You're
you know.
right, you're right.
Well, that's the thing, so the trip to Association of County meetings or any other meeting.
Or any other meetings or trainings that we might all go to.
Okay. I will call them and see, and they probably are going to tell us,
Check RSA number, say, no, we want to know.
yeah.
Because it's all interpretation, I think, in a lot of the RSAs. It's how you
Yes.
interpret it. Which,
All right.
okay.
But I do want you to know that, to the best of my recollection, Carrie and I have never been in Lisa Scott's office
Okay.
together
I
at the
don't
same
think
I
so.
time.
accept that.
I wouldn't swear.
But we have been consuming food together, yeah.
I didn't know that if someone from another department was considered having a meeting with them, the 2 of us. I didn't realize that either, so is that,
You know, then
Okay.
we get the thing like the lunch
yeah,
for the
we're all there.
4-H, not us, we were there, but,
Yeah. That's what I mean.
the delegation was there and had, you know, they should have posted the meeting.
Well, that kind of
Yeah.
was posted, wasn't it? It had a lunch, on the thing, it said, it had the name, the times of the meetings, and then the lunch at 12 or something.
That was on the agenda, I
On the
think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was it
Ask
posted?
Melissa, see,
I
No,
thought
I mean, do you remember seeing it, or?
no.
I don't either.
maybe it was.
But
the-
technically, you know, that was, they had a quorum there.
Well, we should just put something on there and say, we're together 24 hours, 7 days a week, and we're covered.
Well, it's, you know, and it's doubly hard for me, because Terry and I have been good friends for 6 years now.
Yep.
You and I have been friends for, I don't know, since
25,
kids were
30,
in
yeah.
school, you know, so it's like, duh. And then, no,
See,
You know what really ought to change? I think that you can have the delegation, 15 members, 8 is a quorum. They can have 7 members come, and that's not considered a meeting, but, because it isn't a quorum. But we're a board of 3, and if 2 of us sit down, it's a
Yeah.
meeting. There should be some exemption or some way that it only applies for 5 or more, or 6 or 7 or more, something that it gives you a little leeway.
well, unless you want 15 commissioners.
Well, I mean, if they did it on a basis of 5, if you had a 5, well, every time the 2 of us bump into each other, we don't have to worry about whether it's a meeting or not.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So I will call the Attorney General's office and see what they can clear up about that stuff.
I wish you good luck.
Yeah, well, thank you very much.
good morning, Joe.
Good morning. We had a 2-hour delay at school today, so I had to wait and take the grandkids to school.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, see, any other commissioner updates? The only one I have is this Friday. Is this Friday, 7/14? Yes, this Friday. there is a Lance committee meeting, correct? Not posted.
I haven't been asked to post it. Are you asking me to post it?
No, I'm gonna check with Susan first, because I may be wrong on the dates. And we're still trying to get that survey out so that, like on a internet, so people can answer it on the internet and it goes into the survey and it gets transferred into the county office, the website. Or they can get to it on the website, I think. There's a problem with, is it monkey?
Monkey survey or something.
Something,
Yeah.
a monkey something,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's the hang up on that. The other is, I believe, Dale Drew, the chairman, is going to do a report for Susan's committee. What committee is that? One?
I don't know.
Susan Ticehurst's committee, whenever that gets rescheduled.
I think she was scheduling it for the nursing home because we didn't have any availability here.
Susan is, yes. Yeah. Well, they just like that little, it's smaller and this is a pretty big room for 5 people. And I think that's all the updates I have. Joe, do you have anything for us today?
I apologize, I was trying to remember if there was anything I was supposed to be checking on. I guess the bill with Hale's location to the town of Conway for the election will be paid once the 2019 budget is done by Hale's, and it'll have to come out of those funds. For Commissioner Babson, I did have another discussion with Kathy Golden, and 2 students that, I may have mentioned, 2 students that we thought were going to Florida did not go. So they were in school the whole year. So we're being billed according to that.
Okay.
We don't know of anybody new coming in yet, although there's been some talk about potentially people moving in. That has not happened yet. So
No, it hasn't happened. The realtor is the one
Right,
who's been
yeah.
calling me and
Yeah.
getting assurance that they could go to Friday.
Well, nothing has come through her office yet, and when
Okay,
property transfer is done, she's usually notified.
okay. Madam Chairman?
Yes.
May I ask the treasurer a question?
Certainly.
Joe, we had a discussion while you were waiting out the bus delivery for your grandchildren. We had a discussion here on the special, what do they call it, the registry of deeds. Special,
Oh, on the, the fund that's for the
yes,
equipment.
yes.
Surcharge
Surcharge
equipment.
account, yes.
What is your take on it?
Well, initially, after talking to all parties, it seems like option 1, which was having it flow through the business office, the finance office, because of the accounting piece of it.
Excuse me, can you give us?
Yep, let me try.
So is that where the registrar pays the bill and then bills the general fund? Is that the option? or-
I don't have that paper in front of me. The 2 options were, as I recall, were option 1 had to run it through the business office, the finance office, and that's where the registry, the business office paid the bill.
Okay,
And then
the registrar
reimbursed
reimbursed.
the registrar, if you will,
Okay.
the register account. The money was transferred into the general fund to do it that way.
Okay.
However, the registrar was still, in both options, was still maintaining that separate deposit account, which I think is a good thing. We can't commingle. The second option was to have the registrar go ahead and pay the bills, and then let the finance office do a manual input. And I wasn't in favor of that because I didn't like the idea of it being manual. I wanted the stuff automated. However, finding out that it's only 1 or 2 transactions per year, I guess the manual wouldn't bother either. So my take on it at this moment is still to say, whatever is going to be the easiest, most convenient least amount of confusion and most transparent, under those 4 categories. So I haven't quite decided, in my humble opinion, which option is going to be the best. I'm sort of leaning to option 1, but again, I want to do a little more research on it.
Dave, go ahead with the follow-up.
Follow-up. Joe, I asked Lisa when she was in here this morning, why you can't have account 1A over here that handles the money coming in, money going out, with 1 or 2 transactions a year. I can't believe it's an overwhelming task. But wouldn't you have to take in the budget process, take those expenses out of the budget too, and move it in so the whole account is complete over here?
Well, that's part of the issue as far as I'm concerned. That's why I'm saying, Commissioner, I'd like to have a little more time to research some more information on this, because I want to make sure it's transparent above all. Quite frankly, I don't have a problem with the way it's being done at the moment, except that it has an accounting issue from getting it to the general ledger. And that's the piece I'm still a little unclear about, so I need to get some more research on it. I want to do, again, what's the simplest, most transparent, and easiest. If it's not broke, I don't want to fix it, but after talking with the auditors and all other parties, as the auditor said the other day at the delegation meeting, they're not the ones to decide it, they just offered the 2 options. And I think that's a good alternative, so we've got to decide, and I haven't quite got to that point yet.
Which one of those options, or do both options, take it out of the Registry of Deeds revenue and take it out of the Registry of Deeds expenditure? Remove those 2 lines, because that seemed to cause innumerable amounts of questions and problems.
Yes, and keeping in mind that this is a separate account completely. This really doesn't flow through the Registry of Deeds general fund. And so
It isn't revenue for them, and it isn't
well, it is
for-
revenue for them, but it's only to be used for the equipment.
Okay, it's a designated revenue.
It's a restricted fund is what it is. And what's been happening is the registry has been, and properly so, those funds have been used quite heavily. And that deposit account is down to around $40,000 at the moment, a little more than that actually. So, to me, it's a separate accounting issue of that one fund. The next piece of that, I'm probably not answering your question, Commissioner Bevard, but to me, the piece that has to get to the general ledger is the fact that we're buying equipment, and we have to account for that. Now, I'm sure the Registry of Deeds is accounting for it, but to get it to the general ledger, to me, is the issue. So I know that's not a straight answer for you, and that's why I'm saying I'd like a little more time to do some more research on it.
David?
Why, Joe, if you have this total account out here, and you purchase $12,000 worth of shelving, wouldn't it show in that account so you don't have to worry about it?
It does show in that account, because every transaction, you have to have a debit and a credit.
Right.
Which we know. But where I'm a little fuzzy at is when that transaction is completed, what happens to that asset? In reality, in my mind, that asset becomes part of the Registry of Deeds.
Okay, I would
But
agree
that
with that.
Registry of Deeds is also part of Carroll County. And that's where I'm having a little trouble.
And we put it in this account
Right,
over here.
right, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, makes sense.
I'm gonna have some more conversations today about it too, so hopefully.
Well, that makes most, because if the account is headed equipment, then somebody's gonna go, well, why isn't other equipment in this equipment special account?
But it's not headed equipment, it's headed
Surcharge.
surcharge account, and that's where the funds come from for. The Registry of Deeds has a surcharge that funds this account, so it doesn't come out of taxpayer money.
Well, I would, all things aside, I would think it would be much easier to do the Registry of Deeds budget and to have other people review it and make decisions on it if both the surcharge revenue and the surcharge expenditures weren't in there at all.
That's correct, I believe, but you've also got to maintain that information, and you've got to get it to the general fund.
That's your job, and Kathy's job.
And I want to do it the simplest, easiest way possible, and so,
And people should be able to see it.
yeah. I don't know if you had any discussion about the potential of, the registry of deeds gets a 4% commission, I guess you'd call it, or fee from everything that they collect for the tax stamps and the deeds and so forth. And in a subcommittee meeting, there was a brief discussion about potentially putting a bill in to increase that 4%, instead of giving the state 96% of the total revenue. That hasn't happened, it was just a general discussion, so I kind of like that part too.
That was to raise funds
Right.
for the,
Yeah, to do the archive situation.
see, I wasn't really paying attention when I was there.
There was just a general discussion about it, but
Yeah.
I think somebody's gonna look at that for us.
Yes, sir.
Joe, isn't that 4% there to cover the expense of collecting the money?
That's
Nothing
correct.
to do with anything else
That's correct,
except.
yeah. But if you look at things in generality, I'm not sure how long it's been 4%, but I believe it's been that way for quite some time. And as we all know, every year your costs increase. And so I don't think there's been any adjustment there. Now, yeah, we'd like to.
Except that we've raised the tag tax.
Yeah, well,
We only do that once every 10 years
Yeah.
or so, but.
yeah, but it's the fact that maybe, because we have to maintain the registry of deeds as a county, as does every county. And it's not that we're trying to, I don't know how to say this, not that we're trying to generate additional revenue, although that would be nice, but it's pretty clear, at least in my humble opinion, that with everybody going online these days, that I'm not sure the registry is quite as busy as it used to be. All of that aside, this idea of 4% to collect all that seems to be a little on the light side, in my humble opinion. And so again, this was just a general discussion of the subcommittee, and somebody's going to be looking at that, and I'm just giving you a heads up that that might be something that'll be happening. And yes, those funds are to support the collection of the deeds, the funds, but at the same time, the county is completely responsible for maintaining the original documents. And as we discovered, well, I knew about it because I've been associated working with the registry a number of years, but anytime an original document is needed in a court case, a document's needed in a court case, it has to be an original document. You can't take a photocopy. And so what's happening is these documents are in and out and being handled and deteriorating as we speak. And so they need to be cared for, and unfortunately, it appears that while everybody's done the best they could in the past, we haven't kept pace. And so once again, we're kind of caught with, we've got to do something fairly soon, and it's probably going to be fairly expensive. Not a good thing at this point in time, but anyway.
Well, that's why we formed the
Right,
committee.
right.
I'd
I
call
apologize,
5
I'm getting
million a
off
little,
on the-
little less than, a little expensive.
Yeah, I apologize, I'm getting off on the question here, but get off my soapbox.
Okay. Anything else for Joe? Any other questions? Any other comments? Okay, we had no tabled items, I guess, pretty much. Are there any media questions? Public input? All right, David, do you want to read us into the non-public? And then we're going to have a non-meeting, legal meeting afterwards. So, go ahead.
So, you want me to read that one?
Yes, please.
Okay. And you want me to make a motion? You want me to make
Yes.
a motion to go in?
Yes.
Make a motion that we go into non-public under RSA 91-A:3, Roman 2, parentheses, small a. The dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee or disciplining of such employee or investigating any charges against him or her unless the employee affected, one, has the right of public meeting and request the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted.
Roll call, please, Cheryl.
Commissioner Babson? Commissioner McCarthy?
Yes.
Commissioner Bevard?
Yes. And we'll take a 5-minute recess.
Sounds good to me.
Now, Carrie and I might both end up in the girls' room at the same time.
There is a good, very good example of 91A. That should be on the tape.
I'd
Well, let
rather
me
not
go
see that on the
first.
table.